The whip finish is the most common and effective technique used for finishing a fly. It's an important technique to learn before you even embark on your first fly tying journey. The whip finish can be performed with the assistance of a whip finisher tool or done manually by hand. In today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating the manual whip finish technique. For the purpose of today's demonstration, I'm going to be using this 6/0 circle hook and some high visibility 200-pound braid, which I have crudely wrapped onto my spool. This way it'll be a lot easier for you guys to see what is actually happening with the thread. So to get started, we just want to let out about 4 inches of thread. Next, we'll place the index and middle fingers of our dominant hand on the thread about an inch below the hook shank. From here, we'll take our bobbin and wrap the thread around our fingertips at the first knuckle and turn our fingers so that the pads of our fingertips are facing toward us. From here, we'll move into what I like to refer to as the starting position by rotating our fingers away from us and positioning the thread so that the section between our index finger and the hook shank is roughly perpendicular to the hook shank, and the section of thread between our bobbin and our middle finger is roughly parallel to and slightly below the hook shank. It will also be helpful for you to make sure that the nozzle of your bobbin is close to and slightly below the hook shank. From the starting position, we're ready to go ahead and perform our wraps, and you'll notice that the section of thread between my index finger and the hook shank is the only section that will actually wrap around the hook shank. So now I'll use my index finger to guide the thread around the hook shank, bringing my fingers back underneath and around so that the pads of my fingertips are once again facing toward me. And from here, I'll move right back into the starting position. So again, I'll use my index finger to guide the thread over the hook shank and bring my fingers under and around so that my fingertips are facing back toward me, and then I'll move right back into the starting position. Now, I would say 4 wraps is a good standard minimum for the whip finish, but you can perform less or more. It's entirely situational and depends on the type of thread that you're using as well as the materials that you're tying in. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll make 4 more wraps, and as I'm making these wraps, I want to make sure that I am working up the hook shank toward the eye of the hook. Now that we've finished our wraps, we are ready to cinch the knot down, and there are a handful of ways you can go about doing this. The first and easiest way would be to remove your index finger from the loop and press it firmly against your wraps on the back side of the hook shank. This will hold the wraps in place so that you can release the tension by removing your middle finger from the loop and pulling the bobbin rearward to cinch the knot down. It's a good idea at this point to pull on the bobbin while working it back and forth just to make sure that knot is cinched down tightly. After cinching down, you can now use your pair of scissors to cut that thread close to the knot. Now, if you're unable to hold your wraps in place using your index finger due to a crowding of materials, there is a second way that you can cinch the knot down. Simply remove your middle finger from that loop and pinch your index finger and thumb together inside the loop, retaining the tension. I'm not pinching the thread itself, I'm actually just pinching my finger and thumb together inside the thread. So now while retaining that tension, I can pull the bobbin rearward until my finger and thumb reach the hook shank and cinch the knot down just like that. Once again, I'll give it a quick tug, working it back and forth, and just like before, we can use our scissors now to trim that thread close to the knot. Now, if you're making your whip finish in a very tight spot, such as between your materials and a jig head, like if you're tying a very thin collar, then there is a third way you can cinch the knot, and what you want to do is take your bobbin hand and pinch that loop right above your fingers and take them out, and then you can take your bodkin or a similar tool and place it through that loop, and now we're applying tension with that tool. And just like with the previous methods, we can now pull our bobbin rearward to cinch that knot down. And once our bodkin has reached the hook shank, we can simply slide that out. And just like before, we'll pull with our bobbin, working it back and forth to cinch that knot down. And that's really it, guys. Super simple, but just to make the entire process a little bit easier to follow, let's go ahead and watch that again in slow motion. Alright, that's gonna do it for today's video, and I hope you guys did find it helpful. And if you want to see more stuff like this, hit the like button. It helps the channel grow. And now I have to go. My mom is here to pick me up. Okay, bye!